I'm going to do my best to update from my last year's presentation. So last year I did a presentation on technology, and what was very apparent to a lot of us was of the technology companies out there, no one really got a grasp on who was doing what. And we really struggled even after my presentation of talking to people of not just who was doing what, who were the players. So I'm going to do my best to cover that. Before I do that, I want to do a very quick summary about some things to understand where we are as an industry in use of technology. So I looked a couple of things up this morning. Microsoft was founded 48 years ago. QuickBooks, if anyone in here uses QuickBooks, which is probably almost everyone, QuickBooks was released 40 years ago. Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, 34, 35 years ago. We were probably the first at RTO National to release an online application to do deals. That was about 10 years ago. And what I consider the first true software to help a shed dealer to run their business was Shed Suite. And I texted with Jason Grabber this morning. His first release was probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So expectations for technology use in this industry, we need to realize it's been around for really about 5 or 6 years in terms of an application to run the business. So we have to have reasonable expectations of what to expect as it's evolving. A lot of us did not like Microsoft Office for a long, long, long time. And still don't. A lot of people don't. And they've had billions of dollars and 35 years to perfect it. So that's the landscape. Technology in our industry. I started RTO National 20 years ago. Was very fortunate. Started in Greenville, South Carolina. We built sheds and we put them out on rent to own. I was the only player in the state of South Carolina doing rent to own on sheds. I built a horrible building. Treated T111 was a mess. It peeled. It was a nightmare. Flooring was all treated plywood. It would peel and warp. Think about that. 20 years ago in the state of South Carolina, there was one player, and it was me, that did rent to own on a shed. Today, I could not even begin to count the number of people that are selling sheds, making sheds, doing rent to own on sheds, running their business. It is an unbelievably vastly different market today than it was 20 years ago. If you were at this conference 5 years ago, it is drastically different than it is today. There are, a really quick thing, professional equity people walking around, and people go, what's private equity? These are professional folks that manage money to go out and invest in companies and grow them for their investors and make a really good return. That's what they do for a living. That level of, I don't want to use the word sophistication, I would say that level of expertise was not a competitor in this industry 3 years ago. So the use of technology to up the game is becoming what I would have said a nice thing to have 5 years ago. I will go so far as to say a requirement these days. And I think it's only going to get more competitive. I know it's only going to get more competitive over the next few years. The last 2 years, from the data we're watching, we have all been the beneficiary, if you're probably in this room, of government funding to customers. Prices went way up, customers spent a lot of money. We are already seeing it stop in our portfolio, and we're already seeing it stop in demand. So if you do not know how to run your business, it's going to get really, really hard. And technology is one of the biggest things that's not been around for this industry that's here now. That sounds kind of like not a, yoo-hoo, let's go technology. That's just a fact that I feel like I've danced around for a couple of years with people, and I feel like we're starting to see it really impact. The way I'm going to do this at my best is to kind of walk through a customer journey and try to explain who the players are in the industry. That's going to be my number one goal, is if everyone in here walks out of here and says, I understand at least the landscape in our industry of the technology players. There's a bunch of them in the room staring at me, and they're waiting for me to say something really, really wrong about their companies. They're all very good companies. Remember, the oldest one of them has been around really applying in this industry for about 5 years as a go-to-market. So let's keep that in mind. If you have a question, please ask it. As I run through this, stop me, ask the questions. Do not hesitate. It will be much better if there are questions and people raise their hands and ask. So I'm going to do the shed buying journey, how a customer engages and walks through, and then I'm going to turn around and go, here's where I believe, after a lot of conversations with these people, the technology providers are lined up along that journey. So I've got some folks sitting right in front of me with Idea Room hats on. Where does Idea Room fit in that? So as you're applying technology, who are the players that you should be using or looking at using? And then at the end, if I have time, I'm going to do a really rough, quick demo of how you can use the technology. But again, please ask questions as I go. So the journey, we all know it. Customer starts looking for a building, right? You got some marketing involved. How do I engage them? 3D configurators, and I use that term. It is a 3D configurator, but usually there's a lot more involved in 3D configurators than it just being a 3D configurator, and we may talk briefly about that. Point of sale and pricing, inventory management, order processing, transportation and logistics, reporting. How is my lot sales of this lot versus last year, the same period? And then I'm going to talk show a little bit of stuff about manufacturing. I'm not going to go deep into manufacturing. That is a half-day seminar on manufacturing alone right now, as a lot of people know if you're in manufacturing. But I'll try to speak very briefly to it. Here's where I'm going to try to keep my friends as much as I can that are in this industry. And I'm going to do my best to break people down along these concepts. So the very beginning of the journey, searching the marketing for the customer. Right now, as what I would consider the resources for the beginning of that journey as independent companies. Now, I'll show some things where there's others that have 3D configurators, and we'll talk about that. But from my belief right now, you really have Idea Room and Shed Pro in the industry that are focused pretty specifically on the beginning of that journey. How to capture customers, engage with customers, get them into your system. I've got check boxes and I've got grayed out areas, and I want to be really clear because I will get some rightful complaints from Idea Room and Shed Pro if I don't say this correctly. Both of them do marketing, and I'll talk about kind of some areas they focus on. Both of them can do order processing. Both of them can do inventory management. That's not their area of expertise, in my opinion. Ask them about it. Talk to them about it. Watch your demos. See their demos. See how that works. But if you look right now in the industry, that's where I kind of see the beginning of that journey. I'm going to hop into the middle part of the journey. So we run our own dealer management system. There's a long story of why we're doing it, why we've done it. We've had technology. Again, 2000, maybe 13, we released our first online app. We started building a system several years ago because we had some dealers that needed one. So I can talk about our system a little bit, but I don't want this to be an RTO National commercial. Cal is out there, a newer entrant. We'll talk about them in a minute. Shed Suite, I mentioned Jason Grabber and Shed Suite, in my opinion, probably released the first suite for a dealer to run their business. Probably has the largest install base, although I did not ask anyone when I talked to people about the size of their install base. My gut is Jason in Shed Suite. Probably should not use Jason by name, although I think he's sitting out there. I think I saw him a moment ago. Shed Suite has probably been around again for the longest in this. You've got My Shed, the Shed app, and Shedverse, which has a product that's been around for a while but is turning and facing it forward. So very new entrant into the forward facing for other dealers to use. If you ask, so from my being in this industry for a long time, spending a lot of time around technology, when I stood up here last year, we really struggled as I talked to the audience about even coming up with this list so people knew who the players are and about where they focus. I've got manufacturing. I've got SDS up there. And again, I want to be really clear. Just because a box is not checked or not grayed out, please don't assume they can't do that or won't do that. If it's grayed out, that means they're working on it or have begun to release it or recently released it. Use this, I ask, as a guide if you're wanting to figure out and go talk to the different providers and where they play. Use it as a guide, not a hard and fast rule. I have SDS up there because I think it's Shed Builders, the other company we see, but they're not here at the show this year. And I can't think of the guy that runs its name, but he never would call me back, so I wasn't going to put him on my slide. Because I'm like, if you're not willing to kind of talk to the guy about to talk about technology, you're probably not real focused on what's going on in the shed industry right now. But I do know they have a product that's out there, but I do know SDS is one that we see probably more than anybody. I haven't, Shed Builder did a magazine article some months ago about this. I really struggled myself when I got ready to do this talk of who are the providers? Where are they stacked up? That's what we came out with. Again, please check with them. So you're at the beginning of the journey, and I'm going to walk through a couple of things. Where do they fit? What do they do? How do you differentiate a little bit between these two? So I'll show these two up here. And again, be really careful. This is to hopefully try to get people thinking a little differently and asking the right questions when you're looking at using this technology. Idea Rooms uses some augmented reality. They just released a some AI tools to help pinpoint customers and process. They've been around 12, 13, they've been around for a good while. Be careful I quote them. And have a pretty big install base. But they focus a lot on the build, design, the lead management tools. Doesn't mean they can't do other things. Shed Pro, have someone sitting right here that knows a lot about Shed Pro, we'll just say. In my opinion, they can do a 3D configurator. A lot of people are doing that. They seem to focus more on being able to customize some things more on the front end on the marketing side. A website design. I want to be careful. I'm pretty sure Idea Room, if you went to them and said, hey, can you help me create a website and do some design work on my website? I'm not saying Idea Room can't do it, but I would say I don't think that's where they're focused. If you talk to Shed Pro and said, hey, I really need some help on the website design and the front end part of that, they spend more time on that. Depending on what your need is, it's important to know the difference between those. It's important to ask those questions. So what are you really looking for? As you demo with two companies, what parts do I need? I'll flip to the next section. So our DMS, Shed Suite, I'm going to go through several. I'll throw them up here so you can kind of take a look at them. Again, these are summaries. These are ideas to keep you thinking. I want to be really careful that I don't try to pigeonhole a company into this is all they do or this is just what they do. I'm going to hopefully see some smiles, and I'm sure I'll see some frowns from some of the folks from these companies as they go, that's not really a full description. It is not meant to be a full description. It is meant to lead a conversation. And I know more about our software, so I was able to put more details about ours. We use a lot of Power BI and analytics. We do a lot of integrations. I'll show something in a minute about the different ways to put your system together. But we do a lot of integrations. Shed Suite is built, one, they got a big install base, a really proven technology. They just released a manufacturing MRP, and they do pretty much a front-to-end solution. They can integrate, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But if you look at, say, their system and ours, they'll go farther on the front end, and I say ours in terms of a DMS, and they go farther now with their manufacturing on the back end. If you look at My Shed, as I talked to Matthew Black and the guys at My Shed, they'll do a lot more customization than, say, I'll do, and they'll do it, say, our DMS, and they'll probably do a lot more customization than Shed Suite would do. So if you're thinking about needing a lot of customization, they also do a full suite. So they have a 3D configurator built into theirs. Versus, say, a Shed Suite or us, that we don't have a 3D configurator. We kind of stop at that point. And I'll go through that here in just a minute. If you look at the Shed app, the same thing. They tend to go full suite. So where are we in the evolution of this industry? We have people figuring out, where do we want to be? Do we want to be a full suite where we can walk in and be a turnkey solution for everything? Or are we going to have more integration amongst specialized partners? And that's a big, big thing for you to know. If you're working on using this technology in your system, is understanding where it starts and where it stops. And again, a year ago, it was really hard to tell that differentiation. It was really hard to make those decisions if you're out trying to have a demo and try to make that decision. Shedverse is a new one. They've got a lot of experience around software, and they've got a lot of shed experience. So Matt comes out of the shed industry, knows a ton of it. He's got a partner in Joe. Did a Shed Geek, really good Shed Geek podcast. They're now taking that product and making it forward-facing. They're doing a manufacturing module. They're working across to have a full suite. So as you go through and you're talking, if you're trying to implement this, these are the kind of things that you need to be thinking about, what your needs are and what each provider does and specializes in. Cal's a newer player, comes out of a totally different industry. They're coming at it from an extremely unique position, in my opinion. They came out of the transportation industry around food and are looking at this as just, and I want to be careful not to say just another product or just another industry, but one that factors into some other industries they've been in. So as you do if you're interested in a Cal versus, say, a Shed Suite, one of the things to know is install base versus a new supplier. Maybe they have a bunch of great new ideas, but you need to understand them. Whereas, say, a Shed Suite, My Shed, some of the others have been around for a while. Their processes are pretty worked out. I'm not here to make a determination that one's better than the other one, but if I'm a user or a buyer or a provider of one of these, I need to know what questions to ask and what are the differentiators. So now you're putting a system together. Oh, manufacturing. I'll say something really quick about NetSuite and SmartBuilt. NetSuite, really. I don't talk much about NetSuite. I don't have a lot of time. I will say this, the folks that we're working with that have been using NetSuite, it is a big project. A very, 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 very big project. That is not a commentary on the quality of their software, their Oracle owned. They're a massive company. The software is unbelievably complicated and sophisticated. I would just say, if you're starting down the path in our industry of using a software like that, it behooves you to start figuring out some folks that have either done it and stopped or have done it and applied it, because it can be I think the word that was used to me by someone yesterday that is almost finished doing it, it has been over 2 years in getting it done, and his comment was, Phil, it is a beast of a software, and it will do everything we need now, but this has been one heck of a project. So just something to think about around NetSuite. From a manufacturing component, I had SDS up there before. You would have seen as sort of the independent. SDS focuses just on that. ShedSuite's released it, My Shed to Shed app, and Shedverse is working on one. I don't believe it's quite released yet, but they're working on it to work on your manufacturing applications also for the manufacturers in the room. An MRP, some people call it an ERP, a system for that. So these are the players as we're seeing them. And I went through that pretty quick. We'll email it out, but I think that gives you where do they stand? Where are they positioned? So for those that are still looking to purchase or implement, I hope that kind of begins to say, okay, now I have a framework of who the players are and how to go talk to them. How am I going to put this in? Dream system. I did it, Judy. My marketing person wanted me to be upbeat. She said, I want you to use Dream, and I said, I'm going to do my best. So she added Dream system. There's a couple of ways to do this. So for us, and I want to talk about just the way to put that system together. We're an integrator more than anything. So Idearim and ShedPro, let's use as an instance on the front end. We just tack on the middle, and then you'd use the SDS on the back end if you're wanting to do manufacturing. That's absolutely one way to do it. It's done all the time in all kinds of industries. It's very doable.
Costs too much.
Can. Who said that?
Me.
Not. You are 100% right. It can. I think you're going to see it. I think you're going to see an evolution in that, in how that works. But you're right.
First person
You're right.
gets all those together wins.
Yeah. It is a. But you're 100% right. That raises a question, and I don't talk about cost of systems up here. I did two things that I promised I wouldn't talk about with the software companies. Talk about how many customers they had, or talk about their costs. I feel like that's a question y'all need to talk to them one-on-one about, and I didn't want to get up here and make those statements. It can get, in this stage of the industry, very technical. You're dead right. As the industry evolves, how does this work cost effectively? Right. I'll give you another example then. ShedSuite. ShedSuite, and again, I think I saw Jason back in there somewhere is going to jump up and go, that's not just right, Phil, but I think he'll give me a little break. ShedSuite's a good example of somebody that does integrate with Idearoom, but he's built he could integrate, I'm sure, with SDS. I don't think he has, but he's built a module for manufacturers to integrate fully in that system. So he's sort of a hybrid between us. If I go to My Shed and the Shed app, and I don't have everybody up here, but if I go to My Shed and the Shed app, I'm pretty, in regards to what I'm talking about, a front end to a manufacturing, I don't think they are integrating with anyone. Not that they can't. My understanding is, in that realm, they haven't. And I'm not talking about CRMs and some of that stuff. So the choice, and you make a great point, there's a cost benefit. Right now, they're tackling it from front to end. If you talk to some others, you got to figure out where you want to start and where you want to end, and then what's that cost benefit of putting everybody together. Right. Yeah. And cost benefit is definitely something you've got to look at. There's advantages to doing it this way. You've got one provider. You would think the cost eventually should be dropped. Are they specialists in each realm though? So it's a cost benefit. If you go back, say, I'll skip Jason because I'll use the two extremes. I'll use, say, our DMS versus a Shed app. This is not a statement of quality. It's a decision that you all have to make. If you're going to use someone that does integration, you would hope that, say, SDS is a specialist in manufacturing and ShedPro and Idearoom are specialists in the front end, and we're a specialist in the middle, that we're all really, really, really good at that, our piece. And if we make our systems talk real good, you shouldn't really know. If we can do that. An alternative is you have a one-stop shop, a front-to-end experience. Should be very integrated, should work smoothly, absolutely has benefits to doing that. So my job today is not to go, that is better or worse. It's to go, if I'm a user and a consumer of this, I need to know that. I need to be ready to ask that question when I'm looking at systems or trying to put my system together, because I'm about to spend a reasonable amount of money and a lot of time getting it right. And I need a really good system if I'm a user to do this, not for 1 year, but for a while, because of the investment you're about to make. So you need to ask those questions and do those demos and see how it all works together. That's the one thing that we see not really happening so far, is people seem to be kind of piecemealing it as they go. And I think a lot has to do with they just weren't sure who the players were and the questions to ask for our industry. And we see that. Billy Dyer, who works with us, is sitting here. Billy's probably I would guess, is the most experienced person in our industry across this whole platform, because we integrate so much with people. So Billy does a lot of that with our group and sees all this. And when we talk about that issue of a user starts down one path to do one and then wants to do something different or add something, and the whole process wasn't thought through at the very beginning. And that's super important. Some other technologies, and then I'm going to hop into kind of some ways to do it. These are a lot of the other things out there to integrate with. You got the marketing side. CRMs, when I talk to the Shed app, the folks from there, they do a lot around the CRM. They're big believers in using the CRM. Customer capture, customer marketing. Shedverse does a lot around the CRM. Customer capture, customer marketing. I think Shed Suite does some integrations with that. If you're going to use these, try to plan up front. Who integrates with them? How are they going to be used? Those are really important things. Those are sort of the main players we'll see. How's it going to work with your accounting system? Those are the pitfalls we're seeing right now, is just, again, something's been implemented and then the process begins of, well, wait a minute, how am I going to use this with QuickBooks? And it's really hard to figure that out after the fact versus before the fact. How many people in here, if you will raise your hand, are using, man, I hope I don't mess this up when I do this, Judy. See if I can do this. I want to show of hands. How many people in this room are using, already installed and working with someone on this sheet? How many people in this room are using it to do everything they want it to do? Kind of.
That's it. That's it right there.
Kind of.
First person wins.
Kind of. So that tells you a lot about where we are as an industry using technology. A year ago, it would have been 25% of the people that raised their hand, which if you were sitting toward the front and didn't see, a lot of people raised their hand. It would have been 25% of the people in the room would have raised their hand versus probably 75% or 80% that just raised their hand. So it's moving really fast, but the users are now catching up and going, wait a minute, it's not doing this and it's not doing that for me, and that's what I need, and I need it to do these other things. So trying to take a step back and go, okay, here are the players, a lot of the players, what parts are missing is really important right now. If you're wanting to use, and I'm going to try to get back to it, if you're wanting to use a CRM, if you're wanting to do other things with it, how do I integrate and use those within the system? So, time is. Oh, we got good time. I went probably faster than I wanted to. Last year I ran out of time. I had 10 more minutes to talk and I ran out of time. Before I go down this path, because this will absolutely take me 20 minutes, someone asked me a question of what I have not talked about that you really want to hear me talk about. What am I not covering that someone really wants to hear me cover? Anybody? Let's be careful because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But let me stop right there. So his question is, so I went through that so fast. I've got a little extra. I can do this a little quicker if I need to. This next part. So I want to make sure that I cover some major stuff. His question: why are people not using more APIs, which is a way for systems to talk? So why is that not happening? So that communication amongst some of these systems is not better. And if they want to integrate with another software, why is that not happening? So I'm going to table that as a question. Somebody give me another question.
E-commerce solutions that will communicate with marketing platforms like Facebook or Google Ads.
E-commerce solutions, and you're looking for which ones will or who is integrating with some of those?
Just what would have to be in place to be able to make a shed transaction take place online as a complete e-commerce transaction where the marketing platform can track those conversions.
Got it. Know exactly what you mean. So relates to tracking e-commerce across some social media marketing platforms. This is the second question. Give me one more that I'm not talking about that someone in here goes, hey, you're not covering this, and I really came in the door to hear this. Is there anything else? I'm sure there is, but.
On the marketing side of things, what's the best way for marketing in the shed industry? Like we've explored many different ways of getting the word out. What is some of the top 2 or top 3 different things that we should be using?
Okay. So, and I'm going to keep that focused on technology. I got 3. These 2 relate. So I'll call it 2.
If I could throw one more in there, it kind of relates to his over there. It's the e-commerce side of things, like being able to present your products, say you have multiple dealers, to be able to have a presence online that fits your branding, and that is presented the way that you want it to look.
Got it. So the 3 questions I've really got, 3 or 4 questions, are predominantly front-end type questions. Okay. Fantastic questions that I can talk to. API calls. Man, I'm going to be really careful on this because we have it real quick. Why am I the one up here? Started business 20 years ago, put our first online system in 10 years ago, have a team of 10 developers, or 10 in our development, web software development, 5 in our analytics team. We are heavy users of Power BI. 2, although they act as about a team of 5 in our marketing department. So I've got some pretty good experience about this. Why are people not using APIs? Man, I'm going to say this. And there's a couple people in this room. I'm kind of looking at a couple of them that might not like me when I say this. I think it will happen quickly. And in quickly being with some of the players in the next 2 years, you'll see the movement back and forth. It takes time to do that. How about I use that? Because it's true. It takes time to have the expertise to do that, to build systems that link together. Put it this way, we're really good at it. Idea Room has a lot of development talent. We are really integrated with them through an API call, and it moves really fast. I'm pretty sure we are with ShedPro. It can be very difficult to do that if the companies that are doing it aren't built to do it and don't have a need to do it. So if you talk to Shed Suite, it is not that they can't do it, and they may do it in certain cases, but a lot of the people they've partnered with so far they haven't had a big demand to do it. We're working to get on Shed Suite's platform as a rental company, but we desperately need an API feed. Shed Suite's got to figure out where to prioritize that. So back to the integration amongst companies, it will absolutely happen. I have no doubt it will absolutely happen. The transfer of that data, because it has to begin to happen to get you into your accounting systems and do some of that. It's, again, some of the systems have only been around for 2, 3, 4 years and are evolving. I think you'll see that movement happen a lot sooner. His point, though, is you need to understand how they integrate if you're using 2 or 3 providers, a CRM and an e-commerce that I'm going to mention. How is that going to really work? How is that data going to move from HubSpot over into your system? That is, so I think that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. It's not happening now because it takes time, and if you don't have too many people demanding it on the software side, then there's plenty of other stuff for everybody to go do. So that evolution. So the front end side, the e-commerce stuff. I'm a finance guy. It is almost, I have yet to truly find a system that I believed, because so much is done in store, not always online, to fully integrate tracking the marketing side on e-commerce all the way through the system and even track dollars spent to gain. It's just an extremely difficult thing to do, especially if you have in-store sales versus all online stores. Now, can you do e-commerce transactions? Absolutely, right now you can. I want to be careful that I don't speak to other systems. I will say with our system, you can do, a customer can get in the middle of the night, go in, buy a shed, electronically sign all the documents, use their credit card, make it, and have it delivered. They can do that without talking to anyone. It almost never happens. They want to talk to someone. They'll buy it, they'll come back and close the sale, they'll do all that online, but they want to speak to an individual. It is not an Amazon purchase, at least not yet. We've tracked it, we've tested it, we've tried it, we've done all that. The linking of the marketing systems into tracking all that, Billy, can you do that? Is anyone doing that with our system right now? Is anyone doing it with y'all's system right now, Mr. Graver, with confidence that, say, someone is using an e-commerce platform, tracking it across the sale inside the system, and then being able to push that back out to another way to, say, track that through your social media, ad account, something like that, that integrated?
I want to say no and yes, because it is possible now. We can do it, and we have done it in the test, and it's working. So it's not public yet, but yes.
Great answer. That is the perfect answer for where we are as an industry, so you got to kind of be aware of that. The technology is getting there. It's getting close. It's not fully there yet. I think the advantage of what I'm trying to bring today is you all need to know that and to know how to ask those questions, like that question, before you've already gotten into the system. Be aware of that as a limitation or a pro prior to fully engaging and spending all of your time in your system. Or know where they are along in the development cycle. So, is that...
Yeah, I was going to ask one more question.
Yeah.
About, you said from the consumer's perspective, they almost never do it. What are some of the roadblocks that you see hold the market back from that? Not necessarily technology.
So the question is, so I made a comment that we are seeing almost no transactions where someone comes in the middle of the night, whatever, middle of the day, doesn't talk to anyone, shops online, sees the picture, sees all of that, has the price, goes in, leases, finances, or cash purchases. It can all be done online, sends it off, signs all the contracts, signs the paperwork, does everything, and then waits to hear from someone about scheduling. Scheduling can be done online right now and communicated with a customer, not real efficiently from anyone I've seen. I don't think anyone would go there doing it great, but good enough that the transaction could happen. The belief that I've got so far is, number one, it is probably a brand. I buy from Amazon online, and I'm not real worried about having a really terrible experience. I got brand confidence. I would go online if I didn't know anything about this industry and buy from Home Depot online a shed and give them my money because I got brand confidence. We don't have a whole lot of big brands that people are extremely confident in just doing that transaction. Auto is very different. Auto still doesn't do near as much as they thought they would do online. Carvana's had problems most recently. Consumers at that top end generally just don't want to do that. They want to have a conversation so far. The younger demographic, all the talk is, will do it. I'm not convinced yet they still will do it for that big of a specialized ticketed item. So the main thing seems not to be the system constraints. It seems to be the consumer's purchasing confidence. That's what we believe. And we see a lot of the data. Analytics was a question, and then I'm going to roll through this. As our industry gets way more competitive, as I mentioned in the beginning, not knowing how your year-over-year sales is by lot with margins, not knowing inventory turns is going to make it really hard to compete. The analytics that's coming out of a lot of systems now is moving very fast. We're about to release, I think, Power BI forward-facing to all the dealers on the system that is unbelievably simple and real time. I know Shed Suite. I know everyone I talk to is very attuned to getting the data that they've been collecting out in a usable way. I haven't seen anything that's blown me away yet, that's live right now, that I go, wow. Again, the evolution of where we are, I haven't seen anything forward-facing. We have some amazing stuff internal, but for the dealers to use of their system and their data, I haven't seen anybody put anything out there that's just wow. I think there's a lot about to come. I think if we're standing here in 12 months, I think you'll find that conversation has moved dramatically around the data. Because most of it now is presentation of the data. It is not collection anymore. And the problem has been collection of the data in the past. Like, people are just beginning to use a system. They're not using a system. They need to know how to use a system. That's getting worked out so that software companies are turning and going, okay, now that we've got all that part, how do we begin to show you the information so you can use it? I have a feeling, I'm very confident in the next 12 months that will still be a conversation, but not a top conversation. I feel strongly about that.
I can say with confidence that our business needed this 2 or 3 years ago. And so from our experience with where we're at now, we've actually been taking a step to say, well, we need to develop these ourselves and take on that expense ourselves. Because we're not sure that we can wait a year or two for the industry to catch up. We're here now, we need to do it. And I think you can look around in this room at how many people are sitting
So his question is, why is it taking, I'm going to paraphrase it. Why is it taking so long, and should I just go do this myself? I've got a sheet of paper right there. QuickBooks has been around for how long? 40 years. The longest system we have, in my opinion, is maybe 6 years old, probably 5. The cost to maintain and to service is not cheap. To build your own system can mean a lot of different things, though. It doesn't mean you're going to go hire a whole bunch of developers and go build your whole system. There are other platforms out there that can be tweaked, but they also change. The question becomes, are you going to build your own accounting system, or are you going to go use QuickBooks? You're going to go use QuickBooks. They've been around for 40 years, though. They got a gigantic install base. They're not selling to, if they were just selling to the shed industry, they would have gone out of business a long time ago. The sophistication and the cost to build an accounting system to do that. So you've got a software companies focused on a small industry and the software companies are new and needs a lot of customization to get it right. And so while no one wants to hear this, the reality is you just have to be patient. Now, you're going, wait a minute, how can I be patient? I'm getting further behind. I'm not sure you can go build something in 12 months that will be better than what's going to be out here in 12 months. It's changing really fast. The quality of what's moving is moving very, very quickly. I will say this. Y'all are not with Idea Room, but you got the Idea Room hats on. Is there anybody from Idea Room in here? Now okay, I'll say this. Anybody that has used Idea Room as a great example would have had, and may still have some complaints about customer service with them. They had a big meeting early at this meeting to talk about the changes they're making in their software, the changes they're making in their process to absolutely improve their customer service. And they'll do it. And they'll change their software. And they'll change that experience. I have no questions about that. They will do it. But it takes a little bit of time to get that done. So part of back to who's doing what and how the industry's evolving is to set expectation alignments with the industry of what's out there, how fast is it moving, and I'm not going to say the word I want to use. Or as a user, are you being taken advantage of? How about that? The question is, am I being taken advantage of as a user? Like, why are these things not as easy as my iPhone? Why can't it do what I see on TV commercials? It's moving fast, and next year will be very different than this year. And there's probably a lot of things it does that some people aren't using it for the software. So let me do this. I'm benefiting myself because I could easily do a demo on ours. That's online. So a customer goes online, sees everything. A lot of y'all may be able to do this through Shed Pro Idea Room. If you're using My Shed app or The Shed, they have configurators built in. So the customer can go in, do all this stuff, pick their colors. Let's see. Display all the buildings, purchase straight offline, do a lease, do the signatures. This is our system, but there are other systems that will do this also. To do this securely, fast, across the platform is not easy. So inventory management. I will say what you could do 3 years ago around inventory management in terms of knowing where all your units were, what your cost was, what your margins are. Is it on the lot? What are all my notes? Can I do a service log for something in the field or on lot that needs to be repaired? Can I create a price sheet? Can I post it online across my social media? And I'll talk about Shed Hub on them because I'm very familiar with them. I can push all my inventory straight to Shed Hub if I want to use them to sell my inventory. I can push it to social media. Can't necessarily track it all the way through yet, but I can push it out. What else might I can set a transportation. I can call that transportation a retrieval or a, if it's or a delivery or a service call. I can click on a button and see where it's going to go, so my driver can use an iPad or an iPhone and know exactly where to go and when to go there. And I can schedule 10 different drivers, and they each can see their own deliveries across the platform. You couldn't do that, well, 3 years ago. That's our system, but there's other systems that do that. So I want to be careful that I'm not just sitting here doing my, like, that's an example. The things you can do today that you couldn't do 3 years ago, 2 years ago, it's moving really fast. Real fast. Data analytics, you can see this on our system right now. And I can tell you, if you can see it on ours and it's not on some others, they'll be there really quick because they know we're doing it. We got all inventory. How's my inventory? What's on my lot? Again, the next big step that I'm not hearing people talk about, and I'm really surprised, but I think it's because they're waiting on some basic stuff, is what are my margins? I got a lot that sells 50 buildings a month. I said that, 20 buildings a month. I got another lot that sells 12 buildings a month. The 12 builder may be by far your most profitable lot. They may be selling the big buildings that have big margins versus the other one that's selling a lot of smaller buildings that have smaller margins. So don't track by sales, track by profitability. We have, a lot of our dealers are still struggling to have a system that lets them just track sales by lot. And we're going, no, we can give you gross margin. You need to be looking at profitability per lot. It's doable in our system. I would give it about a C right now. It'll be an A- by end of first quarter next year at best. So it's moving very, very quickly. A lot of the things people are asking about, though, around analytics are there. Or they're coming in, I would argue, the next 6 months, maybe a year at most. So there's a lot of change. I answered the e-commerce question the best I could. I answered the API question. I answered the analytics question the best I could. I'm 2 minutes over time. Does anybody have anything else? That was fast. It was probably not as upbeat as I should have been, but I felt like I needed to get information out. Thank you all very, very, very much for coming.